You check the news this week and see the headline everywhere. Inflation is cooling. 3.4%. Down from 3.5% the month before. Core inflation, the number that strips out food and energy, sitting at 2.5%. And if you just skim the headline, you breathe a little easier. You think, okay, good, we're getting back to normal. The Fed is winning. This thing is finally under control. But here's what nobody's telling you. That 3.4% number isn't a finish line. It's not even close to 1. It's a number that is still, right now, quietly eating your paycheck, your savings account, and your ability to get ahead, even while the headlines are calling it good news. My name is Marcus, and I spend way too much time thinking about the gap between what the news tells you about money and what's actually happening in your bank account. If you're someone who's tired of hearing inflation is cooling, while your grocery bill somehow keeps climbing anyway, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps you understand what's really going on with your money right now. Today I'm going to walk you through why 3.4% inflation is not the relief everyone's telling you it is, why your paycheck is quietly losing a fight it doesn't even know it's in, and what this actually means for your ability to build wealth over the next few years. Let's start with the uncomfortable reality. Here's the myth. Inflation dropping from 3.5% to 3.4% means prices are basically back to normal. That's what cooling sounds like, right? Cooling implies relief. It implies things are getting easier. But that's not how inflation actually works, and this is where most people get tripped up. Inflation isn't a light switch. It's not on or off. When the headline says inflation cooled to 3.4%, what that actually means is prices are still rising, just slightly slower than they were rising before. Prices did not go down. They did not even stay flat. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, prices rose another 0.1% just in the month of July alone. That's on top of every single price increase that came before it, going back years. Think about it like this. Imagine you're on a boulder, and that boulder is rolling downhill, picking up speed. Someone tells you, "Good news, the boulder slowed down a little." Are you relieved? No. You're still rolling downhill. You're just rolling downhill slightly slower than you were a month ago. That's what 3.4% inflation actually is. It's not the boulder stopping. It's not the boulder rolling back uphill. It's the same boulder, still crushing everything in its path, just a hair less aggressively than it was in June. So, here's the uncomfortable truth. At 3.4% annual inflation, prices are still climbing meaningfully faster than the Fed's actual target of 2%. That's not a rounding error. That's almost double the target. And it's been sitting above that target, essentially without a real break, for what feels like forever to anyone who's been paying attention to their grocery receipts. Now here's where it gets really interesting because the headline number, 3.4%, isn't even the number the Fed cares about most. The Fed's preferred gauge is something called core PCE, and as of the most recent data, that number is still sitting meaningfully above 2%, closer to 3%. That's the number the Fed actually watches when it decides whether to raise rates, cut rates, or sit on its hands. And it's telling a very different story than the inflation is cooling headlines want you to believe. But let's bring this back to you, because none of this matters if it's just abstract numbers on a government website. Here's what actually matters: your paycheck. According to the most recent wage data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, wage growth right now is pacing at around 3.2%. Inflation, remember, is at 3.4%. Read that again. Your wages are growing slower than prices are rising. That means, in real terms, the terms that actually matter, the terms that determine what you can actually buy with the money you earn, you're falling behind. Not catching up. Not breaking even. Falling behind every single month, even while your paycheck technically gets a little bigger. That's not nothing. Let that sink in for a second. I know what you're thinking. Okay, Marcus, 0.2 percentage points. That doesn't sound like much. And on paper, sure, it looks small. But here's the part that will blow your mind. This gap doesn't just sit there quietly. It compounds. Just like debt compounds against you, and just like investments compound for you, this wage versus inflation gap compounds against your standard of living, month after month, year after year, until one day you look up and wonder why you feel like you're working harder than ever, but somehow falling further behind. Let's make this real. Let's talk about a household actually living through this. We'll call her Maya. Maya is 34. She works in operations for a mid-sized logistics company, and she makes what most people would consider a solid, respectable income, $68,000 a year. Not rich. Not struggling on paper. Solidly, unremarkably middle class. Maya got a raise this year. 3%, actually a little better than a lot of people got. Her employer told her, proudly, that this was a cost of living adjustment. Sounds nice, right? Except inflation, over that same period, ran at 3.4%. So Maya's raise, the one her company framed as keeping her whole, actually left her about 0.4% behind where she started. On a $68,000 salary, that's roughly $270 a year in quiet, invisible purchasing power gone. Not stolen in one dramatic moment. Just siphoned off, slowly, silently, spread across 12 months of grocery runs and gas station stops. She never even connected to the bigger picture. Now, let's look at where Maya's money actually goes every month, because this is where the boulder really starts to show its speed. Her rent, $1,650. That's up from $1,580 a year ago. Landlords, as it turns out, read the same inflation reports you do, and shelter costs, according to the BLS, accounted for roughly 2/3 of the entire monthly increase in the most recent inflation report. Groceries, $520 a month for a household of two, up from $470 a year ago. Car payment and insurance combined, $610. Gas, $180, bouncing around depending on the month because energy prices are, according to the data, still the most volatile piece of this whole puzzle. Utilities, $210. Student loan payment, $310. Health insurance premium through her employer, $240. Added up, and Maya is spending $3,720 a month just to maintain her current, completely ordinary life. Her take-home pay after taxes is right around $4,350. That leaves her $630 a month, which sounds okay until you remember that $630 has to cover literally everything else. Clothes, car repairs, a birthday gift, a dentist visit that insurance doesn't fully cover, any actual saving for the future. Here's the gut punch number. A year ago, that leftover margin was $810. Same job, same effort, same discipline, just 12 months of cooling 3.4% inflation later, and Maya has lost almost a quarter of her financial breathing room. Not because she made a bad decision. Not because she bought something frivolous. Just because the boulder kept rolling a little slower than before but still rolling, and it rolled right over her margin. Does that sound like a good deal to you? This is what inflation is cooling actually looks like for a real person. Not a headline. Not a stock market rally. A shrinking cushion between Maya and financial stress, month after month, while every news alert on her phone tells her things are getting better. But here's where it gets ugly, because Maya's shrinking margin isn't just a budgeting problem. It's a compounding problem, and compounding problems don't stay small. Let's talk about compounding, because this is the part almost nobody explains, and it's the part that actually determines whether you build wealth or spend your whole life treading water. You've probably heard that compound interest is the most powerful force in personal finance. Einstein supposedly called it the eighth wonder of the world. I won't pretend to verify that quote, but the math behind it is very real. Here's how it works when it's working for you. Say you start investing $400 a month at a historical stock market average return of around 7% after inflation. Research from Vanguard and other long-term market studies shows it typically takes about 9 years to reach your first $50,000. But it only takes about 6 more years to reach your next $50,000. And the $50,000 after that? Only around 4 years. The growth accelerates because your money starts making money on money that already made money. That's compounding working in your favor. It's the reason people who start investing in their 20s end up wildly ahead of people who start in their 40s, even if the 40-year-old invests more money overall. Time and consistency multiply. But here's the part that will blow your mind, and it's the part almost nobody talks about. Inflation compounds too. Against you. Silently. Relentlessly. In the exact same mathematical way. just running in reverse. Let's go back to Maya's numbers. If inflation holds steady around 3.4%, and remember, this is being called good news right now, her cost of living doesn't just go up 3.4% once. It goes up 3.4% on top of the already higher number from the year before. In year one, her $3,720 in monthly expenses becomes roughly $3,847. In year two, it's not $3,847 plus another flat $127. It's $3,847 growing another 3.4%, landing closer to $3,978. By year five, assuming her income growth continues lagging even slightly behind inflation, the math stops being subtle. Her expenses will have climbed by well over $700 a month from where she started, while her actual purchasing power, the real stuff she can afford, has quietly shrunk the entire time. That's the hamster wheel most people don't realize they're on. You're running. You're getting raises. You're doing everything you were told to do. And you're still losing ground, because the treadmill itself is speeding up beneath your feet just a little bit every single month, exactly the same way compound interest builds wealth, except this version is built to erode it. So here's the uncomfortable truth underneath the entire inflation is cooling narrative. Cooling inflation at 3.4% doesn't stop the treadmill.
It doesn't even really slow it down that much.
It just means the treadmill is accelerating slightly less aggressively than it was a few months ago. You are still, right now, moving backward in real terms unless your income growth is beating that number consistently year after year, and for most people, according to the wage data we just walked through, it isn't. This is also exactly why the Fed is so cautious right now and why you're seeing so much disagreement among economists about whether interest rates should go up, hold steady, or come down. Some Fed officials are pushing to raise rates further, arguing that inflation sitting above target for this long is doing exactly the kind of quiet damage we just walked through with Maya's budget. Others are worried that raising rates further would slow the economy and cost people their jobs, which creates its own, arguably worse, kind of financial pain. There's no clean, easy answer here, and that tension is precisely why inflation cooled a little doesn't mean the danger has passed. It means the people steering the ship are still arguing about which direction to turn. So what does all of this actually mean for you, sitting here, watching this video, trying to figure out how to not become Maya 5 years from now? First, stop measuring your financial progress by your raw paycheck number and start measuring it against inflation. A 3% raise in a year with 3.4% inflation is not a win. It's a loss dressed up as a win, and if you don't catch that distinction, you'll spend years feeling confused about why you're working harder, but somehow never getting ahead. Second, understand that cash sitting in a low-yield checking or savings account is not safe from this. It feels safe because the number on the screen never goes down. But that number's purchasing power is quietly shrinking every single month, the exact same way Maya's margin shrank, just applied to your savings instead of your monthly budget. Money that isn't earning at least close to that inflation rate is losing a slow, invisible fight, one you'll only notice years later when you try to buy something and realize your money doesn't stretch the way it used to. Third, and this is the flip side of everything we just walked through, this is exactly why getting your money into something that compounds in your favor matters so much, and why starting earlier beats starting bigger. We just showed you how inflation compounds against you on the expense side. Investing, even in modest, boring, consistent amounts, is how you build a countervailing force that compounds for you instead. It's not about timing the market or chasing some brilliant strategy. It's about getting in the game early enough that the acceleration works for you instead of against you. Here's the core insight to walk away with. That 3.4% headline is not relief. It's not victory. It's a slightly slower boulder, still rolling downhill, still gaining ground on your paycheck every single month that stays above that 2% target. The math doesn't care how the headlines frame it. The math just keeps running in the background, whether you're paying attention or not. But I want to be really clear about something before we wrap up, because this isn't meant to scare you or make you feel behind. You're not failing here. The system genuinely is built in a way that makes this hard to see and hard to fight, and the fact that you didn't know your raise was actually a pay cut in real terms isn't a personal failure. It's a gap in information that most people never get because inflation cooled makes for a much better headline than your paycheck is still losing. This isn't about deprivation. It's not about cutting out your morning coffee or feeling guilty over every purchase. It's about intention. It's about knowing exactly where your money stands against the real cost of living, instead of trusting a headline number that was never really designed to tell you the truth about your specific situation. You have more control over this than the headlines make it feel like. Every dollar you put to work instead of letting it sit still is a dollar fighting back against that boulder. Every time you check your real progress instead of your raw paycheck number, you take a little more power back. Your future self is either going to thank you for paying attention to this right now, or wonder why nobody ever explained it clearly. Make sure it's the first one. If this helped you see your own numbers a little differently, drop a like. It actually helps this channel reach more people who need to hear it. The boulder doesn't stop on its own, but you get to decide how hard you push back.